Welcome to my channel. Subscribe and enjoy daily stories about cheating, revenge, and relationship advice. It was a restless evening, the kind where the silence in the house seemed to amplify my thoughts. I'd been pacing the living room, unable to shake the gnawing feeling of unease. Alex had been distant lately, her eyes clouded with something I couldn't quite name, and my attempts to bridge the gap between us had been met with increasing evasiveness. My phone buzzed, and I glanced down to see a notification from a tracking app I'd installed in a moment of insecurity. The map showed Alex's location, a hotel downtown. My heart sank as I stared at the screen. I tried to calm my racing thoughts, reminding myself that there could be a reasonable explanation. But deep down, I knew the gnawing suspicion was more than just paranoia. I dialed Alex's number, my fingers trembling. The phone rang once, then twice, before her voicemail kicked in. I hung up, frustration building. The gnawing feeling was growing stronger, a visceral punch that made my breathing shallow. I dialed her number again, and this time I held my breath, hoping for an answer. When Alex's voicemail answered again, I was about to hang up when I heard a faint sound coming through the line. It was barely audible but unmistakably intimate, a low, flirtatious murmur followed by a soft laugh. My heart pounded so loudly it felt like it might burst through my chest. I threw on my coat and grabbed my keys with shaking hands. The drive to the hotel was a blur of red lights and honking horns, my mind consumed by the image of Alex in someone else's arms. When I arrived, I barely registered the reception desk as I marched towards the elevators, my thoughts focused solely on confronting her. As I reached the hotel room, I hesitated for just a moment before kicking the door open. The suddenness of it was shocking. Inside, Alex and a man I didn't recognize were in the midst of a moment that was too intimate to ignore. Alex's eyes widened in shock as she scrambled to cover herself, while the stranger's face flushed with embarrassment. "Who the hell is this?" I demanded, my voice trembling with a mixture of anger and hurt. I took a step into the room, my gaze fixed on Alex. "Explain yourself, now." Alex's face contorted with a mix of guilt and panic. "It's not what it looks like," she stammered, trying to reach for her clothes. "Please, let me explain." The man, looking awkward and uncomfortable, started to gather his things. "I'm leaving," he said quickly, avoiding eye contact. He made a beeline for the door, and I didn't stop him. My focus remained on Alex. "Explain." I barked. "What's there to explain? I heard everything. I saw everything." Alex's voice wavered. I didn't mean for this to happen. Save it," I cut her off. "I don't want to hear your excuses. Just tell me why you felt the need to betray me like this." Her eyes filled with tears, but she was at a loss for words. I made a mistake. I didn't think." "No, you didn't think." I shouted. "You didn't think about me or how much this would hurt." "I don't want to hear any more." I grabbed her phone, which had fallen on the floor, and tossed it onto the bed. The sounds of the man's footsteps fading away were a harsh reminder of what had just happened. "What are you going to do now?" Alex asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Right now, I'm leaving," I said, my voice cold and resolute. "But this isn't over. I'm done with this, and I'm done with you." As I walked out of the room, I could hear Alex's sobs fading behind me. I felt a mixture of relief and devastation, knowing that this confrontation was just the beginning of what would be a tumultuous journey ahead. The drive back home was a haze of fury and heartbreak, each mile stretching the distance between the life I had known and the harsh reality that awaited me. The aftermath of that night was a whirlwind of raw emotions and sleepless nights. I could hardly focus on anything but the betrayal I had just uncovered. The betrayal was no longer just a private heartbreak, it was something that demanded action, something that would not be ignored. I needed to regain control, to ensure that Alex faced the consequences of her actions. For this, I turned to Jake, my friend and private investigator. Jake had a knack for uncovering the truth, and I needed his expertise to expose Alex's betrayal fully. When I met him at his office, his demeanor was calm and professional, a stark contrast to the storm raging inside me. His office was filled with stacks of files, a testament to the cases he'd worked on. I paced the small room as Jake sat behind his desk, watching me with a mix of curiosity and concern. "Jake, I need your help," I said, my voice strained. "Alex is cheating on me, and I want to make sure she knows that I'm not going to let this go. I want to expose her, to make her understand the gravity of what she's done." Jake leaned back in his chair, folding his arms. "All right, slow down. We need to be strategic about this. Do you have any proof of her infidelity so far?" I nodded, pulling out a folder from my bag and placing it on his desk. "Here's what I've got: photos, texts, and videos. But I need more. I want to make sure there's no room for her to deny it or weasel her way out of this." Jake skimmed through the folder, his expression turning serious. "We can work with this. But you need to be prepared for the fallout. Public exposure is a double-edged sword. It'll hurt her, but it'll also come back on you." "I'm aware," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "But I need to make sure everyone knows what she did. I want her to face the consequences." Jake nodded thoughtfully. "All right. We'll start by gathering more evidence to build a solid case. I'll have my team follow her and see what they can find. In the meantime, we'll need a plan for how to reveal everything. This has to be handled carefully if you want to ensure maximum impact." Over the next few weeks, Jake and his team worked diligently. They followed Alex, gathering more evidence, capturing her interactions with the man I had seen her with, and documenting her movements. Every day, Jake would call me with updates, his tone a mix of professional detachment and a hint of sympathy. "All right, we've got enough evidence now," Jake said during one of our calls. "It's time to think about how you want to reveal this." I was pacing my living room, the weight of the decision pressing heavily on me. "I want it to be public," I said firmly. "A place where she can't avoid it. Somewhere with a crowd, make it a spectacle she can't ignore." "Got it," Jake replied. "I'm thinking of a restaurant where she frequently dines. We'll coordinate with the staff and make sure the media is there to capture it all." "Perfect," I said, feeling a grim satisfaction. "Let's make sure this goes off without a hitch. I want every detail to be in place." The plan was set into motion. Jake worked with the restaurant staff and arranged for a discreet media presence. We made sure that the evidence was undeniable and compelling. When the day arrived, I was a bundle of nerves and anticipation. The restaurant was bustling with activity as I arrived, my heart pounding in my chest. I spotted Alex across the room, her face lighting up when she saw me. My heart sank at the sight of her relaxed demeanor, completely unaware of what was about to unfold. Jake gave me a reassuring nod from his vantage point, ready to orchestrate the reveal. I took a deep breath and walked towards Alex, my resolve hardening with each step. "Alex," I said, trying to keep my voice steady as I approached her table. "We need to talk." Her smile faltered, and she stood up, confusion and concern etched on her face. "What's going on? Why are you here?" I took out a folder and spread out the evidence on the table. Photos, texts, and videos, each piece a testament to her betrayal. The restaurant staff and the media gathered discreetly, ready to capture every moment. Alex's face turned ashen as she saw the evidence laid out before her. "No, this isn't." "It is," I interrupted, my voice cutting through her attempts at denial. "This is what you've done. I'm exposing this to everyone here." The restaurant fell silent, the crowd watching with a mix of shock and curiosity. Alex tried to defend herself, but her words were lost in the overwhelming evidence of her deceit. The confrontation was public, humiliating, and exactly what I had planned. As the truth settled over the restaurant like a dark cloud, I felt a twisted sense of vindication. The public exposure had done its job, Alex's betrayal was now an open book, and the path ahead was clear. The aftermath of the restaurant confrontation was a whirlwind of chaos and media frenzy. The fallout was swift and severe, with Alex's face plastered across news outlets and social media feeds. For me, it was a mix of satisfaction and disorientation as the reality of our broken lives sank in. Jake and I had orchestrated every detail with precision, but the emotional toll was harder to handle than I'd anticipated. The constant media attention was invasive, but I had to stay focused. The public exposure had achieved its purpose. Alex's betrayal was now a matter of public record, and I was ready to proceed with the next step, divorce. I met with my attorney, Claire, at her office. Her office was a haven of calm, filled with neatly arranged legal books and a view of the city skyline. Claire was sharp and no-nonsense, and her demeanor was a relief in the storm of my emotions. "All right," Claire said as I sat down across from her, "let's go over the details. We need to ensure that the divorce proceedings are as smooth as possible and that your interests are protected." I nodded, trying to steady my nerves. "I want to make sure everything is in order, our assets, any financial considerations, and legal protections. I don't want her coming after me or trying to undermine the process." Claire flipped through the papers on her desk, her expression focused. "We'll start with dividing the assets. Given the circumstances, you'll likely be entitled to a favorable settlement. But we'll need to ensure that all financial accounts and properties are accounted for and fairly divided." "I've already started documenting everything," I said, pulling out a folder with financial statements and asset records. "Here's everything I have." Claire reviewed the documents, nodding. "Good. We'll use this as our baseline. Now, let's talk about legal protections. We need to draft a separation agreement that includes provisions to prevent any retaliatory actions from Alex." "Absolutely," I agreed. "I want to make sure she can't interfere in my life or my finances." As Claire began drafting the necessary documents, I found myself increasingly anxious. The gravity of the situation was setting in, and the prospect of officially ending my marriage felt both liberating and heartbreaking. Later that week, I met with Jake to discuss the final steps. We had a brief but important discussion at his office, away from the prying eyes of the media. "Everything's in place," Jake said, leaning back in his chair. "The evidence has made it clear that you were wronged, and the public spectacle has left no room for Alex to deny it." "I hope so," I replied, my voice tinged with uncertainty. "But I'm still worried about how she'll react. She's unpredictable." Jake's expression softened with sympathy. "I get it. It's not just about the legal stuff, it's about dealing with the emotional fallout. But you've got everything lined up. The legal protections are solid, and we've ensured that the media attention will keep her in check." The day of the divorce hearing arrived, and I found myself standing outside the courthouse, feeling a mixture of dread and determination. The process was a blur of legal jargon and procedural formalities, but Claire guided me through it with professionalism. In the courtroom, Alex was present, her demeanor a far cry from the confident woman I had once known. Her face was pale, and her eyes were filled with a mix of anger and resignation. As we exchanged glances, I felt a strange mix of pity and resolve. As Claire presented the case, I watched Alex's reaction closely. She seemed to be struggling with the gravity of the situation, but there was no turning back now. The judge's final ruling was straightforward: divorce granted, with the terms of asset division and legal protections firmly in place. The courtroom cleared out, and Alex approached me, her voice low and strained. I didn't want it to come to this. I looked at her with a mixture of sadness and firmness. "It didn't have to, but you made your choices. I'm moving on." She nodded, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. "I understand." As I left the courthouse, I felt a sense of closure beginning to settle in. The public exposure had done its part, and the divorce proceedings were now complete. The legal and emotional battles were over, and I was ready to focus on rebuilding my life. The journey was far from over, but with the support of friends like Jake and Claire, I felt a renewed sense of purpose and direction. The dust had barely settled from the public exposure and divorce when Jake called me with a grim tone in his voice. My heart skipped a beat as I answered, wondering what new twist lay ahead. "Hey, it's Jake," he said, his voice uncharacteristically somber. "We've uncovered something significant, something you need to know." I sat down at my kitchen table, my mind racing with possibilities. What is it? Jake took a deep breath. I've been digging into Alex's connections, trying to understand if there was more to her schemes. What I found is going to shock you. Alex's lover, the one you saw with her, he's your half-brother, David. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. David? My half-brother? But I barely know him. Why would he be involved in this? Jake's tone was serious. It gets worse. I dug further and found that Alex had been planning to ruin you financially. She's been embezzling money, and David was in on it. It looks like he's been using the affair as a cover for a much deeper scheme. I was silent for a moment, trying to process the revelation. This is insane. How could David be involved in something like this? And what about Alex? Alex's plan was to destroy your financial stability and manipulate you into losing everything, Jake explained. David was helping her with this, and he used the affair to distract and mislead you. We've also uncovered that David's daughter, Emily, was used as part of their scheme. Emily? I echoed, my voice tinged with disbelief. I had no idea. What's her involvement? Jake sighed. It appears David and Alex used Emily to funnel money and hide their activities. Emily's been caught in the middle of this mess, and she's been manipulated just like you. The revelation left me reeling. David, someone I had thought was a distant relative, had been a key player in a scheme that was intended to ruin my life. I needed answers, and I needed to confront David. The next day, I arranged to meet with David. We met at a quiet cafe, away from the prying eyes of the media and other onlookers. David arrived, looking tense and avoiding eye contact. As he sat down across from me, I could see the apprehension in his eyes. David, I began, trying to keep my voice steady. Jake's investigation uncovered some disturbing information. I know about the affair, the embezzlement, and how you were involved. I need to know why. David's face turned a shade paler, and he swallowed hard. I never wanted it to go this far. I was desperate, and Alex promised me that everything would be all right. I didn't think it would spiral out of control like this. I stared at him, feeling a mixture of anger and sorrow. Desperate or not, you chose to be part of a plan to ruin my life. And Emily, how could you drag her into this? David's eyes filled with tears as he struggled to find the right words. I didn't want her to be involved. She was just caught in the crossfire. Alex manipulated me, and I didn't see it until it was too late. Too late. I said sharply. You're responsible for your actions, David. And now, Alex is facing legal consequences for the embezzlement. I'm not sure what happens next, but I need you to understand the impact of what you've done. David nodded, his face a mixture of shame and regret. I understand. I'm sorry for everything. As David left, I felt a profound sense of betrayal mixed with a deep sadness for Emily, who had been used as a pawn in a scheme that was beyond her control. The weight of the revelations was heavy, but I knew I had to address the situation with Emily. I reached out to Emily, arranging a meeting to talk about everything. We met in a small park, a place that seemed peaceful in contrast to the turmoil of the past few weeks. Emily, who looked worn and anxious, greeted me with a tentative smile. Hi, she said softly. I heard about everything that's been happening. I nodded, trying to offer a comforting smile. Emily, I know this has been incredibly hard for you. I want you to know that I'm here to support you. I understand you've been caught up in a situation you didn't choose. Tears welled up in Emily's eyes. I didn't know what was really going on. I was just trying to protect my dad and do what I thought was right. I get it, I said gently. But now we need to make sure that you're safe and that everything is sorted out. I'm here to help with that. Emily nodded, her expression one of relief and gratitude. Thank you. I didn't know who to turn to. As I walked away from our meeting, I felt a mix of relief and exhaustion. The shocking revelations had turned my world upside down, but they had also provided clarity. The path ahead would be challenging, but with the truth now out in the open, I was ready to face whatever came next and help those who had been caught in the web of deceit.